Well, hello everyone. Well, you're getting a good feel for how the semester is going to go now after this first module. I know there's a lot to cover, maybe too much to cover. See the relationship now, culture to art, art to culture, right? And again, we can debate how much of this, especially with the Greeks, for example, how much of their focus on the individual and balance and beauty, how much of that is because they started off as independent city-states, right? And then they developed this thinking out of that, or how much is it that they had this way of thinking about themselves and about balance in the world, and then that gave rise to them aligning themselves and setting themselves up politically as independent city-states, right? So history gets complicated that way, but I hope that you see as you go through this now that if you understand the Greeks and beauty and balance and nothing in excess and the way that they think about things, it informs, right, and helps us understand why their art looks the way it does. And likewise, the art now, now that you know a little bit about it, the art now looks like exactly what it is. It's a symbol of more than just a person, place, or thing. It's symbolic of the meta-narrative, the what you might call the episteme, the how we know what we know at any particular time, right? So that's where we're going. So we're going to get in now to the fall of Rome, get into the Middle Ages, and work our way towards the Romanesque era, about the first millennium, right? The year 1000, which we'll cover in Module 3. But we'll get, as we get through into Module 3. But you'll come across this at this time. So the word for this video, the word to get credit here, is word, okay? And the reason for that is this. You're going to look at the fall of Rome, the so-called fall of Rome. Again, historic debates abound, but you're gonna see the fall of Rome, the rise of Christianity, right? And those two things cannot be dissociated, right? Not that covariance is not cause and effect. So because Christianity rises and Rome, quote unquote, falls at about the same time, it's not necessarily a cause and effect, but there is a lot of overlap, and you'll see that. But the word here is word because you're going to get into the era now when a lot of students, quite frankly, will write me about this time of the semester and say, well, now we start looking at religious art. Let me just remind you that for the Greeks, Athena, right, and Zeus and all that stuff, Neptune and all, and the Greeks and Romans, those are gods. That's religious art. Remember that for the Egyptians and their preoccupation with the afterlife, they are appealing to the Ka, okay, at least. And that's their religion, okay? So you've been looking at religious art all the time. It's just that now we get into the section of the course where the religions that we're talking about are familiar to us, and they still greatly influence the goings on in our day, right, today. So, but I think it's important, right, that you understand religion, at least in the political sense. Maybe not as far as a personal choice, but it will be helpful for us to understand art if we understand, for example, within the Christian community, what are they debating here? What are they? Why is it? Sometimes they want imagery in their religious art. Why sometimes not? No figural depictions. Why in Islam, for example, is there an outright ban on figural depictions within their holy sites? Right? Why? Why is it? And it helps to understand, at least generally, right, what these religions believe and what they claim. So that's why the word for this video is word. For example, Christians will tell you that Jesus Christ, right? So Christian means little Christ or Christ follower. But the Christians will tell you that Jesus Christ is the Word of God, right? The expressed, intentional word from God that has become flesh. Jesus is the walking, talking Word of God in human flesh who lived on the earth, died a sacrificial death, rose again, right, to conquer death, and gives everlasting life to everyone who believes. But notice that all of that is related to this notion of word. So for Christians, the word made flesh is Jesus. For Muslims, the words of the Quran are the foundation of everything thing that they do in their lives. And so you'll also see that in Islam, rather than dealing with the debate I mentioned before in the Christian circles, figural depiction or no figural depiction, how does that go? In Islam, in Islamic art, it's the actual words of the Quran in Arabic that are written into the design element in their religious structures. It's a primary design motif within the other amazing designs that are used in their religious structure. So the word is literally woven into what they're building and what they're constructing. So the other reason this is important is because we go to the Romanesque era as we get to the year 1000. Watch what happens. This whole notion, now by this time you'll have obviously the year 1000, about 1,000 years of Christianity, but only about 600 years where 700 years where Christianity was no longer illegal. Under Romans it's illegal, right? And so this little sect now we're talking about the Western Roman Empire. After Constantine splits the empire, he will establish his capital in the east in Byzantium, which will turn out to be Constantinople. But the West, Rome, Italy, Spain, there's no one home, right? And Ostrogoths and Visigoths will come in and try to take over, but essentially what happens is the trace of Christianity was in there is the thing that grows and flourishes, and Ostrogoths and Visigoths coming in to take over, yes, they do take over, but they eventually become Christianized. And it's not as though there's some Christian army that is there to fight back and, force them to do anything. It's just that they're a Christian. It's like it's almost the Roman Empire just goes, right? Kind of vanishes, and what's left are little independent, right? So the last bit of the word thing. Watch what Charlemagne does with inspiring literature and copying down text so that everybody, at least those who have access to education, will, which is more than you might think, will know the word of God, right? And then as we get to the year 1000, there's this interesting thing that happens as people say, wait a minute, if Jesus is the Word made flesh, what did that word say? Let's go back and check, right? Because the Word of God says that He's coming back to rule. He's coming back to judge, and that's His rightful place. Come back as King. When is that going to happen? Does it happen around the year 1000? Right? So watch what happens as we make this transition. Watch the import of words, written words, spoken words, right? And how these different religious traditions care for that and want to manifest it and want to distribute it and give evidence to it as we go through this period. Okay? The word is word to get credit for this. Any questions, email me. I look forward to our interaction online. Thank you.